Me?
Well, I think, Miles, you usually chair this thing. So.
That'd be good. What's up? Do you want to host?
I guess I can. You made the issue though, Gibson. Would you like to host?
I mean, yeah, sure. I don't know. Whatever. I can go through the things that we've got on the agenda if that's.
Yeah.
Okay.
So can you please try to find the YouTube link?
Yeah, that's a good point. Apparently you get to it from the events page, which is linked in the issue. So if you go into as node.js, you should be able to find it there, right?
Sorry, I just said I was talking to a muted thing. There was a markdown problem. Both links are in the issue.
Oh, cool, then we're live. So, given that we're already streaming, I guess we better go. So hello everyone, welcome to another LTS, or soon to be released working group meeting. I guess the first release working group meeting. Here today we have myself, Gibson Farnstock, Sam Roberts, Rod Vag, Michael Dawson, I think, or soon, Miles Borins, Jeremiah Sinkfield, and James Snell. So, first up on the agenda, do you want to do a roundtable or just get straight into it? Any thoughts?
I think that it makes sense to get straight into it. One thing I would say, based on the agenda, which I accidentally closed, and I'll have to boot back up, is a whole bunch of them are the Semver minor backports, like individual Semver minor backports.
Yes.
So I think we should get through the agenda as much as possible, not including the Semver minor backports, and then deal with them all at once.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. I think they're all actually Semver minor backports.
So then there's something I can bring up before we get to the Semver minor backports, which is 6.1, V8 6.1 on node.js 8 LTS, which was brought up in the last technical steering committee meeting, and we punted it to the LTS working group to decide upon. As of today, we have a pull request to 8.x that has ABI compatibility for 6.1 to 6.0. It's been confirmed by the ABI smoker. It is ready to go. There's like, we could use some testing as far as like, you know, people testing to make sure there's no performance regressions or anything. But I think the question to the LTS working group to start was if anyone had any reasons to block on this or if it shouldn't land. A proposed timeline right now would be that pull request is basically ready to land. We could land it into staging and cut an RC and have the RC run for a week or two and then have it landed in a release. So if we had an RC out, you know, today or tomorrow, we could have it out in a release on, say, October 3rd, which would give us a month of it being in a release before things would go to LTS. Which also
one downside to that, the one you're talking about putting that into 8, right?
Yes.
Okay, so I was looking at making preparing a proposal tomorrow for 8.6, so we can get the NAPI flag removal out in a release prior to interactive, and giving the Node Chakra team enough about a week to update their stuff because they would like to have that out in a release before interactive. So I was going to be preparing the 8.6 proposal tomorrow, and with an eye of releasing on Tuesday.
Of next Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay, so if you want to release next Tuesday, well, I guess we could start with one thing. We have to decide when 8 is going to go LTS. October 31st is a Tuesday. I would like to propose that as the date of 8 becoming LTS. It's also the day that we're talking about promoting 9. Does anyone have any opinions regarding that?
Which date?
October 31st.
If it slips into November, then I'd prefer to do it on the 24th.
What reason would we have for it slipping?
Anything, any technical issue. Really, like if anything goes with building it or anything, who knows, right? It's the last day of the month.
What's wrong with it slipping into November? I mean,
nothing technically, but we've aimed for October.
I plan on generating the actual build artifacts for 9.0 on the 30th, giving enough of a buffer. I'm probably going to be not putting any more commits into it as of the Friday before, so to give plenty of time, or at least for 9. We could do the same thing for the 8 release too, the LTS release. I don't plan on it slipping past the 31st.
I, for one, like the idea of promoting 9 and the LTS on the same date. It simplifies things. It also makes things with the website simpler. It's just my personal preference. We could do a cutoff on the 24th for getting everything ready and kick off the builds and everything on the 24th. So on the 31st, all we literally have to do is kick off the release.
Okay, that seems more reasonable. Yeah, if we build everything on the 24th and have the cutoff for LTS on the 24th, and then just promote the release essentially on the 30th or 31st. I can see that being, pretty foolproof. So
yeah, that also gives us the ability of doing one more release on the 24th, and then we can, lock the LTS release down, which would basically just be the commit that kicks off LTS.
Right. Yeah, that seems reasonable.
So assuming that we have consensus on the 31st as a date, if we're able to get an RC out, following the 8.6 release on the 26th, we can even start getting an RC out tomorrow with examples of the build so people can test with it, even if it doesn't have everything that's in 8.5. If we aim to land that in a release on the 3rd, that gives us a solid month of the release in the wild before going to LTS.
I would like to know, just on like the LTS release date and stuff, that I really don't like pushing every single release until the last minute and over.
I guess
So assuming this is all to make space for 6.1, do we have yet? Has anyone compiled a list of what 6.1 gives us over 6?
There's a pretty massive delta as far as bug fixes and performance fixes between 6.0 and 6.1. And I think in general, it's just the more modern of the V8 that we have, the better off we're going to be on long-term maintenance of it, especially considering how close we were from the turbofan ignition launch. Having the more modern V8 is going to make it's going to help.
Do we need to have a discussion about whether to include? Do we have consensus to actually include V8 6.1 in Node 8?
Isn't that what's driving this discussion?
Well, this is I think that was kind of more about when. But I guess if there's a question of do we, then that's a different.
I think the first question.
When is driven by if. So if we didn't do it, then when would be a lot easier.
I guess the question, maybe I missed it, sorry, having trouble connecting, but the first question was whether it's ABI, 100% ABI compatible.
And our ABI smoker was green on the release.
Okay, so the answer is we believe it is.
Mhm.
Well,
As
also,
much-
go on.
Just as much as we've known any other release is ABI compatible, this one is.
So Rod was asking what else is different and what else V8.1.6.1 gives us, right? And I see Ali's on the call. Is it just fixes for the new turbofan?
It's mostly performance fixes that I've been getting from feedback from the community and putting in. So it'd be good to have those. And it is a bit like 6 weeks closer to the thing that we'll release into LTS. So if that makes a difference, because we're going to support it in LTS for a really long time.
So I do know that 6.1, or I think it's 6.1 is supposed to add something. Maybe it's actually 6.2. But one of the two releases is supposed to add support for import, which would make the experimental modules functionality significantly greater.
That's 6.2.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, I think I don't want to be negative here, but just to reiterate the original case we made for holding back on V8 upgrades before LTS was about stabilizing the current branch before we go LTS, so that we all, and also the users, have expectations about what's going into LTS, and it's stable. And so we know what, it's a known quantity. There's not going to be any surprises. We're unlikely to find out about major regressions, particularly performance regressions, going into LTS and have to scramble to fix them. And there's also the, so people can prepare basically for LTS. I get the case that you're one version closer to a more modern V8 as you're in LTS, but it's a little bit arbitrary anyway, because we're going to be detached from latest development. So I don't find that as a convincing a case. So in this case, I think we can make a special allowance for turbofan, because we jumped on that bandwagon in version 8, and it was really early, and it'd be nice to have some improvements over that, over the initial version, because really it's turbofan itself is adding instability. So stabilizing that would be nice, assuming that 6.1 does stabilize it a bit more. I just, my fear is that we're going to get ourselves into a pattern where LTS means we push everything up to that last minute, and we're dumping all this new stuff in to the current right up to the last minute, and then we push out LTS, and then we may end up creating for ourselves an LTS that needs cleaning up as it matures, rather than launching a mature LTS, because current in this LTS thing was supposed to be a way to get to a mature LTS branch, and then pushing it to the end is not an awesome precedent to set, really, for a stable LTS.
I think when we have 6 months, when we only have 6 months with a branch as current and we're cutting minors the entire time, I'm really not convinced that there is a way to stabilize it in that period of time and actually be having any ongoing feature development. My experience, especially having managed the LTS branches, is that the first 3 to 6 months after it goes into LTS, there's a lot more patches that are being floated for stability, but that it does end up stabilizing fairly quickly, and it's more around December minor stuff that gets landed than dependencies that we upgrade.
So I was thinking about this as well because I've got the C-Aries patch, C-Aries pull request on to upgrade, to actually get into sync with upstream, and it's in theory it's not breaking in any way. It's actually an improvement, and all the tests pass, and it's all great. But that's the kind of thing that if it were to land today, I wouldn't particularly want that to go into version 8, into the 8 branch, simply because the delta is big, and even though the tests pass, it's like, who knows what else is in there that is going to cause instability. It may be a positive thing to have it in there so that we can actually pull in patches from upstream, but we're just so close to this LTS cutting that there's just so many more things to fix. And it's not the greatest message to say, okay, we've got this new LTS thing, but maybe hold off on downloading it for 3 months because it still needs to stabilize.
I think that's perfectly reasonable message, to be honest. Like, we only have 6 months of the release once it's cut, and we're doing ongoing Semver minors through that entire process. Like, it's reasonable that once we move it into a long-term support mode where you have 18 more months, that it's going to be a number of months before it stabilizes. Like, to me, that I think has been at least the message that I've been telling people from day one, and has been my physical experience in managing the branches, is exactly like what ends up happening. But it's also about a similar amount of time to like when you see more adoption coming up.
Just because that's what happened doesn't mean that's a good thing, though.
Well, there's also the increased likelihood of having major things that are going to be really difficult to resolve, like, you know, maybe ABI breakage or security fixes that that cause some major breakage type things. It's just that's what just makes me uncomfortable. And I'd really love to find a way to pull this back into current more for our even branches, so that the last part of current is a stabilization where we have a process that says, okay, we're getting close to LTS. Maybe we should hold off on some things and have less reason to do Semver minors closer to that date.
So for as far as like 6.1 goes, I think that we should get it out there and for this release because of some of the things that we mentioned. Turbofan's a big change, but I'm also concerned about the long-term precedent. And from what you're saying, Miles, I think we should consider having like 6 months is a long time to not let any Semver minors in before going into an LTS that will actually be stable. But maybe we could divide the last 3 months before it goes LTS. We could block all Semver minors and allow real stabilization to happen. I think our users would like it if the first thing that was called LTS was really stable. And we did the stabilization and conservative patching in the time running up to when we branded LTS, not in the time afterwards.
I'm not entirely on board with that. Like, it's a lot of work to keep the branches from diverging. We're sitting here and we have probably about 30 issues to discuss about Semver minors that we're just considering to put onto 6. I think that what we've done so far has proven out as far as an experience that has been stable for people, an experience that has been good for people. And I think that a lot of the things that we're discussing as concerns here are concerns that can happen whether or not you land an extra thing in 3 months. If there's major security vulnerabilities, those can come up 6 months later or a year later. The amount of work that it takes to manage these branches, having the 6 months where 8 is kept as much as possible up to what's going on in master is important for making the ongoing 18 months of maintenance less work. And I have not heard a person from our community complaining about the stability of our LTS branches when we initially cut them.
Probably because they know they're going to be unstable and they don't use them for a while. I think, Miles, like what you just, what you yourself just said is that the minors are destabilizing. Once we stop taking the minors, things get more stable over some period. And I guess so you just have to kind of choose somewhere along that timeline of when you call it LTS. And right now we call it LTS as soon as we stop accepting the minors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess I'm suggesting that moving that out a little bit so that it's more stable by the time it hits LTS would make people happier. Right now, people are just going to wait for a couple months and make sure there's been no regressions, which is okay. It's terrible, but if we had a choice, I would rather
People are going to do that anyways, though. Like the second we cut it LTS, they're not going to immediately put it into production.
I think there also are different kinds of miners, right? Like switching from 6 to 6.1 is quite a different thing than taking something that adds a new, some new API, right? It's the same with the example that Rod had in terms of like a whole new version of Sierras. You can have a miner that has relatively small scope versus some of these other ones which have relatively large scope, and I think the at least my discomfort increases as you say, well, we're going to take something where there's a lot of code change, and we expect it to all be okay, but it's the unexpected just because of the volume of the change that adds to the risk near the end. And I think that's why we made some special cases like we won't take a V8 update within, I forget what whether it was 1 month, 2 months from the end, because that was seen as like one of the bigger things. Now, I
don't think that the V8 update is as risky as we're making it out to be. This version of V8 has gone out into the browser to billions of users for multiple weeks before we even take it. I mean, I understand the Sierras thing, and I also understand how it does potentially change our profile. But I think that I feel that we're leaning a little too risk averse on this, personally.
And that's what LTS is supposed to be, though. It's supposed to be kind of a risk adverse.
Yeah, I was going to say that. It's like LTS is our conservative option, and current is our let's just do everything option. So LTS should be, and it's for those users that want conservatism. So we really should be enforcing that.
Honestly,
sorry, Ali, what was that?
Sorry, I was going to say I think it's fair to say that LTS is a conservative option, but at the same time, saying that a V8 upgrade is destabilizing is I think overestimating the risk profile, because it is actually stable and running in your browser for a large number of people. So it's I think the risk is just not the same as bringing in some other similar miner.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I don't think it is necessarily inherently destabilizing, but it is still, I would say, more risky than the average Semver miner we have. And if we're having trouble with stability already for our Semver miners, I can't see upgrading like last minute or even like kind of close to the end being like a great idea for an LTS.
And there's also examples of stuff that's caught us in the past with V8 that you wouldn't notice in browsers, and buffers is a great example of that. Our interface with what we need to run buffers has caused problems with us with performance particularly. And I'm not saying this about 6.1, just this is a general case that we do need time to shake out the things that matter to Node and to Node applications in V8 that are different to browser. And sure, I think we've gained a lot of trust over the last 18 months, particularly with V8 and the process, and it's been going really well. And we're probably at a much more stable point than we used to be with regard to our upgrades of V8. But there still is a shakeout process that needs to go, so we can see once we do these upgrades to see what does it mean. It's like when we did 6. It's like saying when we said, how is this going to impact users? The answer is we had absolutely no idea. It was just this vague thing of, hey, it's faster for a lot of web stuff, but we don't really know. So let's wait and see what users tell us about their benchmarks. And in the end, it turned out to be quite positive, I think. But the fact is that Node applications are not browser applications. And the way we interface with V8 is not the same as the way that browsers use V8, or that Chrome uses V8. So it's not entirely the same. It's mostly the same, but it's not entirely the same.
Yeah, so that makes sense to me. So I would say we know we have feedback from the browser, and what I would like to see is a month of feedback from Node, and I think that's adequate amount of time to flesh out the issues.
One thing I think is worth putting out there.
That month of feedback from Node, I mean, yes, that's very helpful, but the the concern there is that month is when we're supposed to be stabilizing, making sure that LTS is stable. So that month of feedback is going to be release candidates, not hopefully it'll be there. People will be using it and providing feedback and that kind of thing. But it's primarily it's just a very short window of time before it's supposed to go LTS.
That's not what I proposed, James. I proposed that we put it out in a release in 2 weeks, which would have a month of it being out in the wild. Also, one thing that I do think that's worth bringing up as an alternative to the way that the LTS is being painted, people want LTS to be the best and most stable node experience overall. And we have to optimize for the entire lifetime of the branch. Everything that I'm hearing right now is optimizing for the first 3 to 6 months. These branches need to be maintained for 3 years. And I think that taking extra risk right now to offset the overall maintenance burden and stability burden of it over the 3-year lifetime is something that's worth balancing. Only optimizing for the experience, I think it's short-sighted to optimize for the experience.
Well, I think you're being short-sighted by making that case as well, because you're saying that an extra month or 2 of getting closer to master is going to give you, more stability over 3 years. That's overstating the case a little bit.
Yeah, I agree with what Rod said there.
We seem to be talking. We're talking 2 different things, right? There's the general case, and then there's the 6.1 case.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of 6.1, personally, in terms of 6.1, I'm probably more pro 6.1 simply because Turbofan itself is unstable, and so stabilizing that is a positive thing. I'm just really concerned about the precedent we're setting here by pushing everything right up to the line and then pushing out our release of LTS right up to the end of October. I mean, this is really awkward, and I hate to see this become the norm. Sorry, Michael, to interrupt.
So kind of what I'm hearing, and is what I think echoes my feelings, is like, in terms of 6.1, being 6 months closer because it's only, a couple 6-month cycle into Turbofan being on is actually worth the risk. As a general case, I wouldn't take it's 6 months closer, we should do it every time. So I don't know, in terms of closing on the discussion for 6.1, it may be that we're sort of all trending to thinking that's okay. We just don't want to agree that that's the standard practice. And maybe that we need more discussion, but we don't necessarily need to close on that discussion right now to make the decision on 6.1.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at as well. I mean, I have my concerns about 6.1 just because of the short runway of time, but it's probably the better option to go ahead and land it. Nate, as far as a general practice, I'd prefer not to be landing significant V8 updates within 2 months of going LTS, just in general, unless it's an exceptional circumstance.
Right. So I would say, for me, I'd be comfortable in saying, yeah, we go forward with 6.1 as an exception to our rule, but leave the rule in place. And then,
of course, the danger with that is every time we say, okay, well,
yes,
we made an exception last time. So
yeah, I know we've never managed to stick to it. But I don't know. I don't think, like in this case, it seems like the right thing to do.
We're also really good at forgetting these things because it's going to be a year before we have this discussion again. And we can all have different recollections of what was said. So that's the tricky bit. So we're going to look at what was done rather than what we said.
And I mean, realistically, we'll probably have different problems every time we butt up against this, and we'll have to make decisions that are best for the branch that we're dealing with. I don't think we could come up with any generalization for this that would fit every release.
Well, and that's like, I'm kind of comfortable with saying it should be 2 months. But like this time, if there's a special case, we shouldn't just say, well, it's 2 months and no, we don't do it. We should have the discussion, and if it's the right thing, do it.
So are you saying we should make a cutoff of 2 months for all minors?
No, we haven't done that. We basically, I think the current guidance we have in place for now is just that it's 2 months for V8 updates.
Where do we have that documented? Because I don't recall having seen that before.
I'm trying.
There was a pull request for the new LTS thing README that I did. It was just too big a delta, and it got closed. But we did document it there, and we did have the discussion. We did agree on it, and it did come down to 2 months.
So perhaps we should take that one item of business and make it into a single pull request and discuss it there.
I think so.
Yeah, that's a good way. You know, we can have the discussion there.
And personally, I mean, going back to the Semper minors, I personally would prefer that any Semper minors within that 2-month period be treated as exceptions only. That's just my personal opinion.
Well, maybe they just force the discussion by the release working group.
Yeah, review. I mean, because there's some ones that I would like to go in, like, you know, if we're able to finish off the NAPI changes, you know, those things are probably not a risk to the rest of it and have value getting in. So.
Yeah, speaking on that, I mean, I think I kind of like Sam's idea that he brought up earlier, but I think 3 months is kind of too long. I'd like to see it more like a month and a half or 1 month.
And maybe it's like Rod just suggested, or I think it was Rod. Just it's not that they don't go in; it just goes into the mode like we have for our LTS releases, where they get reviewed before they go in.
Yeah, that could be reasonable too. I think that was James over like 2 months suggestion.
Right. You know, it basically means you can look at one, and if one turns out, you know, Semper minor turns out to be risky, and you say, oh, okay, the risk isn't worth it, versus routine ones that you look at and say, okay, yeah, we're not worried about that, then. But you know, because if that's sort of the same decision matrix that takes place once is in LTS, there's no reason why you should block them.
Yeah.
Before that.
So,
maybe we can discuss this in a new issue or pull request.
Yeah.
Does anyone want to step up to create that?
I can take a cut unless anybody else wants to volunteer.
Sounds good.
I'll open 2 issues right now, and then we can turn it into a pull request.
Cool. So actually, before we get into the Semper minors, assuming there's nothing else on that, sounds like there isn't. There's one other thing I probably should mention. In the build working group, we had a discussion, and we are currently having a discussion about whether 32-bit support for certain platforms should be either dropped or, maybe less supported, specifically X Linux. It's not decided, but I think James put it up for TSC as well.
I put it up for TSC review, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, we'll definitely go have a look anyway, because it has I guess it's a sort of build / release. It kind of crosses both lines.
Yeah, the issues there are apparently we have some of our, is it the dependencies that are pushing it up?
It's the upgrade. So we've stated that the minimum supported level of GCC is now 4.9.4, I would say, right. which means we have to upgrade use a different dev toolset to build on CentOS 6, i.e. X Linux. And that toolset doesn't support 32-bit builds.
And the challenge there, of course, is we have quite a few IoT developers that are still on 32-bit platforms.
Yeah. I think the bigger challenge
IoT x86?
I believe so. I don't know the details. I just heard back from folks saying, yes, don't get rid of our 32-bit builds.
That would be, do you have contacts? Because I think the biggest one we have is we're just not sure who's actually using it, and then part of the thing.
Let's see what I can dig up. Some of them are folks that aren't quite public, so.
Sure.
Like customer type stuff. I think the plan, the proposal that they just wouldn't be fully supported, but we'd still build them, if possible.
Do you mean it was a proposal that we wouldn't do releases, but we would still test against them? Is that
right.
Yeah. Yeah, that might be a good. So maybe we support them, say they're a tier 2 or a less supported version. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, I'm not sure it's kind of relevant to release, but I think it's probably a build. Anyway, do get involved in that. Right. If there's nothing else, I think we'll get into the Semper minors.
The one other thing I'm just going to mention before is I am going to rename the LTS repo probably right after this meeting or soon after. Just putting together the last couple PRs PR the description of the release working group into the website, and it seems like somehow it got lost in the TSC merge, so back into there, and then I'll rename it. It's a heads up.
Cool. Right, should we start? I think Miles, you just shared a list of current ones, right?
Yeah, so there's two different sets. There's open backport PRs that have Semver minor. There are 3, 6, 7 of them. Then there are pull requests that are labeled LTS watch and also have Semver minor on them. There may be an overlap between the two, but I don't believe that there's a huge overlap. So it gives us about 23 different pull requests to review. So I think we should start with the ones that already have backports in.
Yep, probably oldest to newest.
The first one is inspector enable inspect break in v6.
Yep.
One seems like a pretty good idea to me. It's confusing for people to have to remember which one uses inspect, which one uses inspect break.
Yep.
When core goes end of life, this would just make it consistent against all of our managed releases.
And it seems low impact. I mean, it's just an alias, right? It's not. It's like a high risk change.
That's correct.
So, any objections? I guess.
Nope.
Seems fine to me.
Okay, great. I've commented on it. The next one that we've got on here is allow CLI args in env with node options. Sam, this is your backport. Do you want to just give the quick?
I think it's really, really useful. What am I supposed to be arguing for? Why it should go back in?
Just explain it is.
Yeah, I think it's really useful. I think it's particularly good and useful in production, and it solves a problem where we've had where we kind of not randomly, but kind of depending on, well, it is semi-random. A particular feature is either exposed as an environment variable or a CLI argument, or sometimes both. Can be quite confusing. Sometimes you find it one place, sometimes the other. And it's difficult to control the CLI argument often in production, whereas environment variables are easy to set. So I think this is really useful. And there's a whole collection. I have to rebase the PR again. It keeps getting out of date. But I think it'll be very useful, and it's not, there hasn't been any, to my memory, I don't think there have been, it's not a very big change in a way, and it has not triggered any problems in the branch it's been released on.
Right. It should be low risk.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've used it. I haven't seen any issues with it.
So I'm definitely a +1.
No objections.
Okay, great.
Miles, just FYI, because I think there's going to be another release of 6.7.2.
Yeah.
So should we tell people to rebase or hold off?
So I didn't want to sidetrack, but we did have a discussion about asking backports to target the .x branch rather than the staging branch.
Yeah, for this reason, sure.
For this exact reason. Sam, I would say if you rebase and target against 6.x instead of 6.x staging, you shouldn't have to rebase against it again the next time. Maybe we just tell all these Semver miners to rebase against 6.x, and if they do that, then we should be able to tell when we go to land these if that works out well or not.
So I can try that, Miles, though. I think the conflicts happening here are because of other features that are also being added in 6x, so that, like, I won't see the conflict, but then you'll see the conflict.
The other people will, yeah.
Like when you try yourself. But I'll look. This is something to experiment with. Anyhow, to me it doesn't matter. I will.
Maybe you could suggest it for like collaborator raised PRs, because I feel like they'll be happy trying stuff out.
So the next one that we have is fixed default params for fswrite sync. Sam, you had requested this one as well. Do you want to speak to it?
Which list are you looking at? I'm staring at the one in the issue.
Yeah.
It's in the it posted in the Hangout.
Oh, sorry.
This is default params for fswrite sync backport to v6. add support for FSWrite and FSWrite as documented. Updates docs and code comments to reflect the implementation. There's a fix to FSWrite to work the way that it works in the docs. It works this way in 8 and up. This will just allow things to be consistent across branches.
Yeah, I think
Doesn't this like subtly change behavior if you're passing in like wrong arguments?
It's been a long time since I've looked at this. I'm staring at it now. So far, I don't see that. It mostly documents the fact that the argument can be a buffer or a string. Fixes up the optionality specs, which were wrong. And I don't think so. I think it's if people were passing, I think it just makes it do what everybody would expect it to do.
One issue has been raised since the behavior was changed in 7.2, and the single person who raised that issue came to the conclusion that their code was wrong, not ours.
Yeah, but that's still, even if someone's code is still wrong, we can still introduce this sort of interruption, which is less than ideal.
Yep. Okay. So
I agree that ideally this would land, but I don't know. I'm not sure if it should land into an LTS.
Maybe we should get a more specific description of exactly what is different. So what kind of code would behave differently? And that might be more compelling.
Do you have a link to that issue, Miles?
Yeah. I guess we already have one case where it did break somebody, right?
Yeah, but it's not linked to in here.
It is linked to. If you follow, you know what I would suggest, because we have a huge backlog and we only have about 10 minutes, I'm going to add the group. Can we discuss this in the pull request?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Okay, so the next one coming up that has a backport is crypto add sign verify support for RSA, SSA, PSS. So this is a backport of a commit that adds sign and verify support for the RSA, SSA, PSS crypto algorithm. It adds for the PSS padding scheme specifically. Sign verify functions use the old EVP sign, EVP verify OpenSSL API, making it impossible to change the padding scheme. So this just allows people the ability to do more padding schemes, but I do not believe that it changes any behavior or anything with the way that things currently work.
Yeah, it seems pretty uncontroversial to me.
How much, like, can you tell from, well, actually, we could look at how big a change is it in terms of code lines of code?
Give me 1 second here.
So I'm just opening it up myself too.
530 plus 20 minus.
Well, a bunch of that is docs. Are you?
Yeah, that's all in the markdown. In the actual code, it's about 20,
Still
40.
It's actually
There's about 60, 70 lines of code change, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
And
most additive too, so.
Yeah, and it's duplicated. It's like 35 lines, but stumped into 2 places.
Right.
I think it's pretty safe. I'd like to call attention that it didn't land clean, but that was because there was another PR that hadn't landed, at least as of the 25th of July. So
I think I'd be okay with this one.
no objections.
I'm okay with it for that.
It's been fine. It's been in since July.
Yeah.
question. Why did the docs commits for some of these changes appear to be missing?
Well, this one definitely does have docs. Which one are you talking about?
Maybe I'm looking at a different one. The net listen one doesn't. Anyways, continue.
Net listen is not a Semver miner.
Oh.
Okay, so with no objections, we'll move on to the next one. Doc assert document starts stack start function and fail. This one was accidentally ported at first, but since the part was there, we left it open just in case. So refactoring of the assert module, making assert.fail doc compliant, and no more fifth argument. It seems to only really affect, well, I guess I'm going to say -1 on this one, actually, because if we're changing the way that assert.fail works, even if it's working according to the docs, I don't see that that gives us like any sort of like major benefit, and it does potentially break some test suites.
Yeah, I agree.
I agree, and I don't really think that the change is valuable enough for LTS, anyways.
And it sounds like no one's pushing it, so.
Okay.
Yep.
So Miles, you're commenting on these, right, as we go?
As we go, I'm adding.
Okay. So the next one is redirect warnings command line argument, 14480.
Sam, you open this one. Do you have anything to say?
I think it's really useful and low risk, and its lack. I think I bumped into it because its lack of it not being there was causing conflicts on a couple other things I was trying to land. James?
Yeah, I'm kind of in favor of landing this.
So this is one of James's from December last year.
Yes.
Yeah. Seems reasonable.
Yeah, I'm +1 as well.
Okay, cool. And the last one from this list is use bundled CA and use OpenSSL CA check. I'm very +1 on this. Anything that improves our ability of using crypto and people using their own certs, I think, is important for us to include.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of it too, obviously.
Yeah, I'm +1 too.
What about this is one that says it's Semver Major in the comments.
That's actually worth bringing up. I totally forgot about that. Thank you for digging in. So if we look at the original, it's labeled Semver Major. James, you marked it Semver Major.
Hold on. I gotta pull it up.
What was the PR number, the original? I'm having trouble finding it.
12087.
Okay.
There's a lot of changes to tests.
No note on why it was marked Semver Major.
The backport needs to be rebased, which is why it looks like there's so many.
Yes.
Why
Yeah,
it looks
the
like
original
it's so
PR is
big.
pretty small. You have a look at the original.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
original chain adds the 2 flags and a test.
I don't think it's. Do you remember why you thought it was Semver Major, James?
But is it because you can no longer use both flags at the same time, right?
Yes.
Although, was that possible before? Did it just crash? Like, maybe this is one to take back to the issue tracker, because it sounds like we're okay if it's not Semver Major, but obviously it is.
So the reason it's December major is because these adding using these flags will crash if anybody uses them in any other version. So it was just because of the adding of the flag.
But I guess the question is, what would happen if you did use both on node 6 now? Like, would it not error? Because if not, then why are we forbidding it? Like,
Are you saying that using either one would error before?
No, it's using both will error after this and didn't error before, as I understand it.
Oh.
Using them both is a no op right now, whereas if you use them both, it will error once this is added.
Could break somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't seem like a good idea, unfortunately.
That would actually change.
It's really hard to see.
So if you use, so on node 610, if you use bundled CA by itself, you get bad option. On 6, I'm on 610. I haven't updated my 6 in a while.
6.11.3, I'm not getting bad option when using either both together.
So I just realized that this adds a check that they can't be used together, but the actual functionality is there. We should definitely not land this commit. We can land the functionality, perhaps, if it was not landed, but that is not what this commit is about, or this PR.
Yeah. So using them both together works fine. Since this adds an error, that's why it was Simber major.
Yep, I don't think we can land this.
Okay, so that's a no?
Yeah, no.
No. Okay.
Okay, so but that's this very specific PR to do the check. It's not the general features, right? They are going back.
Are the general features already back? I don't know.
Well,
use bundled CA and use OpenSSL CA. Those flags are in 6 now. The challenge, the reason this was added was because the order in which these are specified changes the behavior, and they're mutually exclusive.
right.
So whichever one's
just the kind of behavior we'll have to live with in an LTS for now.
Yeah, so I think we just stick, we have the behavior, but we can't land this breakage.
Right.
And that actually should be noted as a known issue with 6. It's probably included in the next change logs as a known issue.
Okay, cool. Closing. Okay, so that takes care of all the backports that we have against the branch. All the ones that are still open are now ready to land. So we are at the end of our time. We do still have 15 more to review. Are people able to run late right now, or should we maybe just schedule another meeting at a sooner date to review these?
I'm fine up until 2:30.
No, I'm fine now.
I have to drop off, but I'd say go ahead without me. So.
Okay. So let's just keep going here.
Can you relink the rest of the list?
Yeah.
So I think we should just quickly talk about the var to const in lib 13756, because that is one that kind of it's quite a big one if it does go back, right? Even if, and the general question is, should this? Well, this is sorry, no. This was a question of should it land in master because of the breaking the difficulty in backporting it might add to getting that back into 6, for example, and probably 8.
Yeah, I'm -1 on landing this right now.
Interesting. I was kind of gritting my teeth, but I was kind of +1 on the principle we should do the right thing for master and suck it up for LTS. Is this purely cosmetic on master, or does it actually have performance implications?
I think it's cosmetic. It has negative performance implications on 6, and the problem is that then any PR that changes those lines could we could end up getting consts backported quite easily without noticing, which is a deopt in the 6.x release of the 8.
Okay, well,
which one are we looking at?
13756. I'll just put it in the chat.
It's basically changing all instances of var to const. I also don't really agree with doing this in one large batch. The way that we've been doing this up until now, which has been like reasonable enough, is like slowly changing it over time in smaller pull requests as things are being refactored. While doing this in one batch, does get it over with, it's going to create conflicts all over the place. And it's going to make backporting to 6 tough.
But if we backport it like soon, because we did this with the tests, right? We kind of did it in master and then sort of backported it quite quickly. If we could do that, then in theory, that would minimize the churn.
But we're not going to want to do it because we're not going to land that on 6 because there's a deopt in the V8 version.
Sure. So I mean, so if we were going to land it on 8, for example, if we left it until 6 goes maintenance, which is next May.
Yeah.
Then maybe I was just thinking it might be easier to get all over and done with and just say, right, change everything we can, backport it as soon as possible, and then kind of hope that gives us fewer conflicts.
Yeah, we're not that far off. We're like 6 months away from 6 being maintenance. And at that point, once it's maintenance, then we can totally do it and immediately backport to 8.
Yeah. Okay. So any objections to doing that? Or at least that is a plan for now.
That sounds pretty compelling to me. That I didn't catch the relationship between the 6 months and the 6x going out of date. So I really like waiting for 6 months and then doing it this week.
Cool. Also, there's a tracking issue for so just going through what's on the list on the agenda it's not in that list of issues. There's a tracking issue for full VS 2017 support that has the LTS agenda tag on it. I think this is Raphael asking whether basically VS 2017 support is something we should be targeting for LTS. Yes, the answer is yes.
I think we want to be building on the latest version of things. And I mean, it's a timeline thing at this point, right? It's like if we can get it working, great. If we can't get it working before 8 goes into LTS, but what's necessary to get it working is Semver minor, right? If it's Semver major, then that's unfortunately where we find ourselves.
Yeah, I guess the question is, so with Node module version, if we build Node on a later version, does that mean you have to then build your add-ons with the same version of Visual Studio? Like if we bump to 2017, does that mean everyone else does?
I don't think
Node module version?
I haven't heard that when SDKs are ABI incompatible across. Well, maybe for C++. Interesting.
I don't mean a module version. I mean, what is it? There's some number. It's like 120 or 140 these days.
I mean, the Node module version is like a number, and it's like, I don't know, 50 or 60 or something.
Yeah, no, I don't mean that. I mean, anyway,
okay.
Apparently, Refac just pinged me saying that it is ABI compatible. So, I mean, it's basically assuming that there aren't any incompatibilities. Then yes, we want to be on the latest one, right?
Yeah.
That seems pretty.
I think it's as simple as like as long as the process is non-Semver major, then we're good. If it's Semver major, then it's not good.
Yep. And the latest version of build tools seems like a good thing to support. Okay. Good. I'll put that in issue.
Okay. So.
But wait. So what's the conclusion here for 13052? I wasn't actually super clear on the question because it's an omnibus issue, not a PR.
I think it's, do we want to be building Node 9 and VS 2017 or even Node 8, right? The answer there. Do we want to upgrade our build machines or test machines for the latest version? Well, test machines, we cover all the versions, right? But build.
Right, and the question is, for us back then is, does it have ABI implications?
Yes, so Raphael said it doesn't. Basically, it sounds like a build issue, right? If the build working group want to update the machines and there aren't any Semver issues, then I don't think the release group would care or would mind either way.
Seems like a good idea probably for 9, but I can't comment on if it's a good idea for 8 or not.
Cool. Does that answer your question, Sam?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Should we go on to the whatever the next one is?
Said whatever he said. Is he? Are you guys following along on IRC or something? Or?
With what?
Well, you said you said Rafat said that there's no ABI.
Oh, he just pinged me directly. I think he's watching this video.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so I'm just going through and cleaning this up. I reposted the list, which is stuff that's has the label LTS Watch 6.x in Semver Minor. So a couple ones that we have here. Number 9163. Make add exit callbacks per environment.
I can't remember for sure, but it's possible this helps embedders. Although I think most embedders nowadays are on a new version of Node because most of them run Chromium too.
Yeah. So it attempts to address one of the to-dos regarding making the add exit callbacks per environment instead of the current global. I personally, like, while this may fix some things, I don't see an extreme obvious need for it.
Yeah, I don't really see much harm or much want for this. It's just clean up.
So I'm going to go with that we don't land it. Is anyone very much in favor of having it land?
No, I think that's fine. Just as long as it's sort of we decided no real reason to, and then if someone comes along and says, oh, we really need this, then we can. It's not a hard no, right? It's like a.
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't seem to help backporting, and it doesn't seem to have any behavioral change we need. So why backport it?
Yeah.
Of course, Miles, is there one more Semver Minor expected before maintenance, or is this the last?
This very well could be the last one.
Right.
So the next one we have here is upgrading libuv to 1.10.1. But I think that this got in 6.11.
I was gonna say this PR is really, really old.
Yeah, I think the labels just hadn't been updated on this one.
Yeah.
Yep. Looks like it.
Okay. Extendable CA certs v6. So this one doesn't need the label on it. This was a backport of something that landed cleanly.
Didn't we already land that?
Yeah. Sorry, like I'm just being exact here to make sure we're not missing anything, and we're getting a lot of false positives right now.
Yeah, it's good to make sure the labels are up to date.
So this one also looks like it landed in 6.11.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, it looks like I just didn't do a good job of updating labels after 6.11. My absolute apologies. This one also landed on 6.11. Okay.
The headers one doesn't look like it did yet.
Which one is that?
10.805.
Add new functions to outgoing message.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. This
Looks
PR
like we're waiting on a backport by Brian.
Okay, so does anyone see a reason why this one shouldn't land?
Not really, but I think most of the ecosystem is so entrenched in underscore headers that landing it in v6 or not won't really make a difference.
Okay, so should we just leave it and not waste Brian's time?
But wait a second. So if the situation is that on 8.x people should be using underscore headers, but on 6.x it's not there. It's really nice if a feature is uniformly available across more of LTS, so you can write code that'll work equally as well on 8.x and 6.x and 9.x when it comes out. Is that the case here? So I'm not really.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. So long as we can actually get a backport.
So this gives a public API to something that was previously had to use a private.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do see the reason. I do see the reason to try and make it consistent, because otherwise, how do you encourage people to actually use the new thing that we've added?
Yeah, it gives them another year before they consider using it. Okay.
Yep.
Let's take a look really quickly. We've done a pretty decent job in the last little bit about getting a few things backported. So let's see where the conflicts are here. Okay, the conflict is still like non-trivial. But I think that, you know, if someone wants to take some time who's not Brian, it should be doable to backport this. It's just a little bit inconsistent.
Does Brian not want to do it? Is that?
I think it's just time.
Okay.
We could put a ping in there saying if anyone would like to backport Brian or someone else. That had quite a lot of review, that one, so maybe.
Yeah. Or let me take a look. There was a 7.x backport, and maybe that one will land.
Yeah, we might have done it that way.
Well, Tyler said it wasn't landing because the test was failing, suggesting that.
Yeah, so HTTP outgoing has an inconsistency, but I think it might be just something on the prototype that exists in 6 that doesn't exist anymore. I'll take a look at this. Maybe I can put a backport together that works. Okay, so the next one is crypto. That's the one that we have open. That should have the backport requested label. Okay, cool. Use system CAs instead of bundled ones. Did that?
Looks like it was landed onto staging already or something.
Yeah.
I think I landed it and then withdrew it or something.
Yeah, it doesn't like it went into release.
Oh no, wait. No, actually, sorry. It looks like Miles did land it onto.
Yeah, this was a backport itself. Okay, cool. Process, add optional detail to process emit warning.
I would skip it. It's not critical. Only if we backport something that uses it later.
Okay, so just leave it for right now?
Yep.
Okay.
In fact, that's what it says in the bottom of the thing. Is there something we should put on it to say so we don't triage it again? Like a don't land, but put a comment saying land if you want?
Yeah, the comment's already there. It's pretty clear.
So maybe we should just take off the LTS watch?
Oh, well, maybe, so we don't have to keep seeing it again?
Yeah, I was just thinking of it.
Yeah, that's a decent idea.
I'm going to leave the LTS watch on only because we're literally only going to probably, like, we may never do this again.
Yeah.
It's probably good to just have that one available just in case.
Fair enough.
TLS accept lookup option for TLS Connect. NetConnect and consequently HTTP agent support custom DNS lookup option. However, as we move to HTTPS agent, this option no longer works because it was not proxied by TLS Connect. Fix this inconsistency. This seems like one of those edge cases that's going to catch people.
Yeah, it doesn't seem super critical, but yeah, I kind of agree that it's inconsistent and not particularly risky at all.
And Fedora is saying on here that he wanted to see it backported all the way to 4 if possible. Obviously, that's not going to happen at this point, but it seems reasonable to consider backporting to 6.
Yeah.
Yep. Speaking of which, slight tangent, but we were talking about doing another maintenance full release. I guess that's something we should discuss maybe at the next meeting.
Say that one more time.
You were talking about, there was discussion about doing a last or another 4 release.
Oh, I think I'm just going to open a pull request for it, and then we can discuss it in the pull request. There's enough of a backlog to justify one at this point.
Okay.
Okay, so this one lands cleanly, but there's a conflict in the docs.
Which one?
The accept lookup option for TLS Connect.
The one we just looked at in Brittany's one.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna try to get that one backported today, as long as we're all in agreement about that one.
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Okay, async hooks, initial implementation.
I mean, they should be backportable, but we would have to backport a lot of fixes along with it in the same release.
Yeah. So I'll throw it out there then, Jeremiah, since you were closest to it. If we want to have an async hooks implementation in 6, this is the time to consider it, and it's a non-trivial amount of work.
Yeah.
You
know what, I'll talk to Trevor with it about it.
Okay, cool. And just for timelines, so you know, I'm hoping to get an RC out today or tomorrow for the next patch version. The patch would come out on the 3rd, and I'd want to have the RC for the minor out on the 17th.
Right, yeah,
So
I think that's in the wiki for the RC. In the wiki schedule.
So that's a pretty, I think that's a pretty reasonable timeline to put this together if we're going to.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so 2 more. Overridable keep alive behavior of agent. It introduces 2 overridable agent methods, keep socket alive and reuse sockets. These methods can be overridden by a particular agent class child to make keep alive behavior customizable.
It's another where Fedor requested it. He was like, hey, can it go back? How's it go back?
Does anyone see a reason not to?
Nope.
Yep, seems fine.
Yeah, it seems like a useful feature. It doesn't look destabilizing. It seems. Oh. Oh yeah. Sure.
Okay. And last but not least, we have upgrade libuv to 1.12.0. So the only thing that I'm seeing here that's potentially dangerous is it does change the minimum support for glibc.
Oh.
To what? Where did you see that, Miles?
One of the commits here. It's from kernel 2.6.18 to kernel 2.6.32, glibc 2.5 to 2.12.
So I guess the question is that?
That almost is enough for me to say that 6 months before this goes into maintenance, maybe we just don't do it.
Yeah. Can you say the versions again?
I pasted the Hangout.
I pasted in the Hangout the diff, but it's kernel. The minimum kernel becomes 2.6.32, and the minimal glibc becomes 2.12.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'd really say no unless there's a strong reason to have it.
It does fix when crash. I wonder why it needs a new glibc. I'm wondering if that was unnecessary.
I think that this is the one that introduced the API that FS Copy was built on top of.
Actually, Ben said the support for older systems is still there, but going forward, we won't bend over backwards to keep in working shape. In a comment. So it sounds like it doesn't technically have to. Yeah, from that comment, it doesn't actually. It's not an actual breaking change. It just it's like a documentation thing.
Yeah, I see no particular risk in this one, personally.
Okay.
We could say let's backport it, but not backport that minimum support version update, right? Is that a feasible thing to do?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I remember something about this where we saw internally for our Node.js package builds, saw the bump and then realized that it didn't need to be bumped, but I might need some clarification. So
Ben said it might become non-academic in the future, which again is like
right.
It's not an actual, yeah. Given that, I'd be okay with it actually. It's not an actual update. It's not an actual break.
I guess we can do the RC with it. We can also promote the fact that it raises the supported kernel version and see if there's any pushback.
Well, could we just say, you know, at libv, if you like to do a backport, and can we backport this without raising the supported version? Bearing in mind we're not going to update libv again in v6, and see what Colin and Ben and Sal will think.
Yeah, we tend to run. I think we tend to run into problems when like minimum supported libc versions go up and stuff.
Yeah, but if this is just documentation, like this isn't. It sounds like it wouldn't be necessary. It's only because it's a planned change going forward.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well. So does it matter? I mean, is basically where we're getting to is that if it actually ups the requirements for glibc, we're not so comfortable with it. Whereas if it doesn't, it's sure. Why not?
I just kicked it off to Colin Ben and just said, do you see any issues with backporting? The minimal version of kernel and libc are slightly worrisome, but your comments appear to imply that it's not a big deal. And I have a feeling like Colin or Ben will be pretty straightforward and honest about whether or not it's something we need to be worried about.
Yep, I'm on +1 as long as it doesn't actually change that supported version.
Okay, cool. Then with that being said, that list of 15 is now down to 5. 4 of the 5 of them we've agreed on landing. The other ones that are backports, all the backports that are still open, are ready to land. We will have a 6.12 in about a month and a half's time, or I guess a little bit longer. And we'll include all those Semver miners with it.
Yep, it's good. Got through everything up to date, I think. Cool. So if there's nothing else, I guess we should go to questions belatedly. So if anyone has any questions, put them on IRC or in the GitHub issue. And barring that, especially given that we are half an hour over, I think we should call it there.
Yeah, I think we should call it there. We can always answer questions asynchronously too.
If you have questions, they can just ask, sure. Cool. All right. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Yes, thanks,